Welcome to the Customer Wins podcast, where business leaders discuss their secrets and techniques for helping their customers succeed and in turn grow their business.
Hi, I'm Rich Walker, the host of the Customer Wins, where I talk to business leaders about how they help their customers win and how their focus on customer experience leads to growth. Some of our past guests have included Pem Gary at Sinex and Patrick Meyer at DocuSign. Today, I'm speaking with David Knoch, the CEO of Docupace. This episode is brought to you by Quick, the leader in enterprise forms automation. If your sales process depends on filling out forms, especially when it's within a new account opening system like Docupace, then you should be using Quick. We make filling out forms the easiest part of your transaction. Visit quickforms.com to get started. Now, before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to our partners at Docupace and share a fun fact. We've been doing business together since 2011, and the customers on the Docupace platform have now generated 27 million forms and saved over 21,000 trees. With that, let me introduce our guest. David Knoch is CEO of Docupace, a solutions provider focused on digitizing and automating operations in the financial advice and investment industry. Prior to joining Docupace, David served as president of First Global, a wealth management partner to CPA and tax planning firms. David served in that role for 11 years prior to the company's strategic sale to Bluecora in 2019. David is also a recognized leader, having been named to the Think Advisory Luminaries class of 2021, was awarded CEO of the Year by Wealth Tech Americas in April 22, and was voted one of the most 25 influential people in the investment advisory industry 2 years in a row in 2018 and 19 by the readers of Investment Advisor magazine. David, welcome to the Customer Wins.
Thanks, Rich. I'm super glad to be here. This is going to be a fun conversation today, I think.
I've been looking forward to this. Now, if you haven't heard this podcast before, I talk with business leaders about what they're doing to help their customers win, how they built and deliver a great customer experience, and the challenges to growing their own company. David, I know Docupace, but our audience and really, I want to understand your business a little better. Fundamentally, how does your company help people?
That's a great. Thank you for asking the question, Rich. I'm going to give you two answers. I'm going to kind of give you the reason why Docupace exists in my mind, and I'll tell you a little bit more sort of practically about what we do to help the financial services industry and help people. So sort of stating our purpose. So here's my perspective. I guess I'll start with asking you a question. Have you ever been through a financial planning process?
Oh, personally, yeah.
Personally,
of course.
Okay. Did you enjoy the experience?
You know, the hard part of that experience was all the data they wanted up front and how much effort that took. And then I didn't even feel like they used all of it.
All right.
So I can't say I really enjoyed it all.
Let me ask you a more specific question about your level of enjoyment. Did you like talking about money and mortality?
Oh, mortality is the worst conversation, right? I'm looking at my wife like, you're going to die. She's like, no, you have to die before me. It's not a fun conversation at all.
But most people don't mind the financial planning process, right? Because there's some outcome they're trying to achieve that generally seems pretty exciting to them. But the whole part where you got to talk about money and mortality is generally pretty filled with anxieties. Those are not natural conversations for people, but you do it. You talk to the financial advisor about money and mortality. You give them all the data. Sometimes the process is great. Sometimes it's not great. Listen, we have a business called Precise FP that can make it great for firms if they want to do that. But that's beside the point. But you get through the process, right? And what comes out of that process is a financial plan that to some degree represents sort of the physical manifestation of this conversation about hopes, dreams, and aspirations, which involve money and mortality somewhere along the way. And you release that. At some point, you release that plan into some implementation phase, whether through the financial planner or on your own. You've got to turn that plan into reality. And then your name gets spelled wrong. They call you Rick Walker, not Richard Walker. You get paperwork that comes back to you because you missed a signature. You have to transfer assets between platforms, and that transfer takes too long. Like something happens to almost everybody somewhere in that process, which makes them revisit all of those anxieties again. And so next time a financial planning opportunity comes up for you, right? birth of your child, for example, and you want to think about how do we do education planning. Maybe you hesitate to call your financial advisor. And so from our view, we want to turn financial planning into financial planning well executed so that we can make sure that there is no anxiety, stress, or friction in that financial planning process, that you can get through it, talking about money mortality, get this plan and bring that plan to life with all of the confidence that you had at the point you tried to bring that plan into reality. And so that's the reason. Ultimately, how do we help people? That's how we believe we help people. Now, more practically, Docupace is a back office solutions provider for the wealth management industry. We do everything that exists in the back office of typically enterprise wealth management firms, but our clients are everyone from sole practitioners to giant multi-thousand advisor enterprises, new account opening, workflow, document management, data storage, regulatory document delivery, advisor compensation, compliance, and so on and so forth. And so, but our goal at the end of the day is to make sure that financial planning becomes financial planning well executed. We just have a series of tools that allows firms who believe that the next stage of their value proposition is to transcend experience and now go into a focus on execution.
I love that vision because I was a financial advisor before I started Quick, and having a client sign documents and have it rejected, which means their deposit got delayed by 2 extra weeks and they missed the market opportunity. Oh my gosh, that's so embarrassing, so uncomfortable. I'm surprised they didn't lose the customer over it.
Yeah, it's a huge part of the stress for a financial advisor, particularly in the financial advisor context where the advisor is relying on a third party to help build their brand in the eyes of their clients. That's a huge extension of trust, and we take that very seriously.
Yeah. So let's go further back in your career. You've been in financial service a long time. What made you want to get started on that path?
So if I go really far back and we go to a different industry that I was in, I was sort of fascinated about the ability for businesses, which transcended to people, but fascinated by the ability for metrics and data to get connected to outcomes, particularly financial outcomes. And so in a different career, I became very curious about the financial services industry because I saw this connection on the data analysis metric side with outcomes. I've since then obviously learned about how human this business is and how metric and data focused it shouldn't be, but that's beside the point. And so that was sort of the key trigger for me to explore a career in financial services multiple decades ago. Having got my sort of early view into the financial services industry, I think there were two things that motivated me a lot in my earlier days. One was, I think, early in my financial services career, I was blessed with an opportunity to sort of solve problems at scale that made financial advisors' lives better. And I found myself enjoying that. And through that, I got to understand sort of the nobility of our profession, right? How aligned financial advisors were and with the outcomes of their clients, how personally they took it, how called to service they were. And in my case, most of my career was spent helping CPA financial advisors help their clients be successful. And so, I learned that there were sort of two common threads in the CPA profession that caused them to be advisors, which I loved. One was they love solving complex problems. And second, they love doing good for people. And both of those needed to exist in the relationship with the client for good things to happen. And I loved being part of that. And so that was sort of the fuel that got poured in the fire. And ultimately, what made me realize that this is not a data-driven industry whatsoever, but a relationship and client-driven industry. So for what it's worth.
Yeah, it's definitely psychology. And I really resonate with something you said in there. When I was a financial advisor and I had this software product, I felt like, wow, if I could help 10 clients or 100 clients directly, or I can go help thousands of advisors help tens and hundreds of clients across thousands. And I like that impact. I like having a bigger impact that way. So let me ask you, you switched out of managing a very successful company through a sale, and then you went to the tech side of the world. What brought you over to tech?
So a couple, so I think the biggest thing that brought me technology was experience I had in my prior firm, early on in building technology. And so I had the privilege to work, very, very closely with a number of key technology people. One of the things I was proud of creating or being part of creating at First Global was, our investment advisory programs. And those programs in their early days were actually created by us. We built full portfolio accounting system, we built performance reporting, we built billing, we built trading, we built, advisor portals, proposal system, and we had a very, very comprehensive system, model management, rebalancing, all of that in the platform we built. And so um, these were the days before a lot of sort of formal business analysis work and Agile and Scrum existed. And what I didn't realize until later was we were actually doing a lot of, of what are today sort of Agile principles. And so as business analyst, which I never realized I was writing documentation and I was sitting with the engineers and helping them bring this to life. And through that, I learned how to write SQL code, knew our database structure. And so the power of technology to influence outcomes for financial advisors, create better results for them, create better results for their clients, became super apparent through building an investment advisory program. It was hundreds of millions when I took it over, and very, very unscaled, and was billions and billions and billions by the time we sold that business. And so I understood the power of technology. Plus, I think it probably got a little bit more sort of technology background and experience than the typical wealth management president or CEO. And so
Yeah.
I knew I wanted my career to go into the technology space if I was ending up in a career shift. So here I
Well,
am.
that's great. That's really great. Now, wasn't First Global a customer of Docupace when
We
you were
were,
there?
yeah, we were a client of, we still are. That firm is
Right.
still a client of Docupace, but while I was there, yes, I hired Docupace. That relationship was probably 10 years old by the time, I transitioned out of that firm and came over to Docupace. So yeah, I've got an interesting perspective on the business from both running it and being a client of it.
Yeah, for sure. And those aren't easy decisions. So I'm curious, like, what was the main thing that drew you to Docupace and made you say, this is the company we want to invest with for 10 years?
Yeah, so I think there's two stages to that, Rich. And so first, it was, very, very early on in Docupace's history when the product solution set was a lot smaller, right? Our big impetus back then was to get rid of all the darn file cabinets that were literally on every wall of the office, right? And so,
Right.
the SEC had allowed people to start storing documents electronically and shredding the physical copies. And of course, we, like everybody else in the industry, perhaps want to take advantage of that. And Docupace was the key player in that space. And so we, like many, large providers in the financial services industry, chose Docupace to kind of help with those early stages of digital transformation. And so that was the big, big early impetus. But like the rest of the financial services industry, I think we too saw the power of Docupace to be a much more comprehensive back office platform. And so we grew along with Docupace to allowing it into new account opening process and greater part of our workflow. And we got to share sort of a common experience and SLAs with our financial advisors. We ultimately ended up, many, many years into the relationship, taking an opportunity to fully zero base it in a good way. Like let's sort of re-implement Docupace and take advantage of everything Docupace has done and everything we learned as a business. And it was an amazing experience because we drove new account opening times to, a few hours, as opposed to what our peers were experiencing in many more than a few hours or a few days. And we
Yeah.
drove financial advisor satisfaction with the back office to 97%. And we couldn't have done it without Docupace platform. And so we were sort of proud of our ability to use sort of a common technology platform to really scale the business, focus our team on their best work, and create better results for our clients.
Man, that's a great story. And I forget how simple the beginnings are of a company where Docupace was focused on document storage in a time when gigabytes were not cheap and not freely available,
Yeah, exactly.
and how it evolves. Do you know Docupace's first customer? Is that a story that you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, Docupace's first customer was well before my time, and about 4 years into our history, what was at the time the Voya business, which is actually now that part of the business now the Stera business, and so that was our first financial services customer. Really changed the trajectory of the business. Prior to that, we were focused on um, broad-based industries for document management. And so anyway, that was sort of the first real meaningful entrance into the financial services industry. And so that was a great client then and great client today.
Yeah. Do you think that they were influential in driving the genesis and evolution of Docupace? And if so,
Oh,
how?
100%, right? I mean, that you're as you know, right? Your early and meaningful clients are your oftentimes your deepest collaborators and partners, right? And so their perspectives and views are really important in shaping what ultimately becomes the future direction of the product, right? And so, in many respects, we remain eternally grateful to them for the path that they were pretty key in setting us upon. And so I'm not sure Docupace would look the way it does today if it weren't for, I think, the collaborative nature of that relationship, which has stayed that way since its early days.
Well, I personally feel this what you said is really true, but it's kind of a balancing act, maybe a double-edged sword in some ways. Because if you listen too much to a customer and only do what they want, you may not serve other customers or drive off your core competencies and start doing things that you weren't supposed to do. When you joined Docupace, did you have to bring things back into the front and center, or was it really well honed? I just don't know at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I to a sort of a principle of, at least in my view, a principle of how to work with clients. I think a tendency of many businesses is to respond to its clients by saying "I can." I think the better response is that "I care." And so, in that, I think there's an obligation at times to first to tell the client the truth that they may need to hear at that time. I mean, tell it with, that's what I say. I care. Like, if I care enough about you, I will tell you no when no is the right answer because it will keep you from making a mistake, heading down the wrong path. That's hard for businesses in their early days because they want to be accommodating, they want to capture the business, they want to do the project. They are perhaps uncomfortable in trying to take a consultative approach with clients. Now, listen, some businesses in their early days do this quite well, but many are, I think, sort of more anxious to do that. And I'm not sure we were really any different. And so part of my journey here has been to sort of help our team understand what I believe is our responsibility to our clients to use our 21 years of success and failure to make sure that clients do their best to avoid the failure part of it and only end up with the success piece. And so, I mean, to me, we definitely had to cure for that, I believe. And I think this principle of "I care, not I can" is a huge part of delivering what I believe is the right experience for clients.
No, that's great. So you've talked about Voya early days. What is one of your favorite customer success stories, or even a failure point that was pivotal for Docupace? How did you help them transform? What was their outcome?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you a few. And again, I think there's some client service principles that matter to me embedded in some of these. And so I'll give you a few. And so we've got a very, very large client, our largest client, in fact. We work together on project with them, which is very, very, very complex. A lot of parties involved, a lot of technology, a lot of just very complex. And it's interesting because we found a way in that relationship, and it's been important and intentional to us to have what I describe as sort of mutuality and openness in it. And so that relationship is characterized in one respect on being very curious about the other. There's not a lot of blame, even in cases of failure. We take responsibility without being held accountable. Like, we found our way to really have this mutual and open relationship that I think makes the quality of our work better. and we've been intentional about having fun in that relationship. And so I don't know that that's always the character of the biggest client or big client relationship. Oftentimes there's a lot of, on the part of the business, right? Fear and anxiety that shows up, even if the client's not intending to create that fear and anxiety sometimes can keep the business from putting its best foot forward. And if the client leans at all into that fear and anxiety as a way to sort of coerce outcomes, which happens from time to time, I actually think it gets worse, right? And so, I've acknowledged to them publicly, and I think they've acknowledged back to us, that this character of that relationship is part of what creates our combined success. We truly are one team focused on one outcome. I also think, and so I'm proud of that. There's another one that's sort of happened recently. There's a client we were working with on a big project, and that they hit a snag unrelated to us. They hit a snag in this project to where I think, they had asked a question. I realized there was an opportunity to serve here. And so rather than think about this as an economic condition, I think it's an important part, if you really care about client experience, client service, to put outcomes before economics. And so we had scoped this project out. The project was where we expected it to be. And I felt as if the right decision for this client was just to help them out. Like, we got your back. We'll take care of it. And so we helped them in this situation that they found themselves in. Was not our responsibility to help. We didn't have any unique experience here, but they could move work from their plate to ours. We did it for free. We paid our people, project pay to work after hours to do it. And everyone sort of won in that case, right? And so I think if you put outcomes before economics, beautiful things may happen later. I don't think businesses think that way all the time. It's like, okay, I've got an opportunity to serve. How am I going to make money on that? I'm not suggesting making money isn't important.
Right.
But I'm suggesting that it's not always. I think if you enter into every client experience and client relationship and every client situation as a transaction, I think you're destined to end up with a transactional relationship. And so it was important for us to not think of this as a transaction, but just an opportunity for one business to help another, and we'll worry about it later. And so I like that. Listen, the other one, and I'll go to the sort of failure side. I wish I could say every implementation we've ever done has been a perfect implementation. Certainly historically, that may have not always been the case for us. I think today it's much better, but I don't like to leave a lack of success out there in the minds of clients. And so I think for me, and I know our team, it's really important keeping this principle of outcome before economics, to uphold the value proposition of your brand. There are, like, if you tell someone you will create an outcome for them, then you should create that outcome for them, whatever it takes. And so we've had an opportunity with that, setting aside the past, setting aside economics, to just do what needs to be done, right? And so we've got some really successful reinvigorations of some relationships, just based on saying, let's make this work. Let's not accept anything other than an unmitigated success as the outcome. And so that I think can embolden a team internally as well, because once they realize that quality and service can be synonymous with their work, they want to do more of it. And so they'll go start seeking out every case where they were less than perfect and be like, let's go back and make it perfect. I think that's great. So anyway, I could keep going on this stuff forever, but
obviously this is the nature of who you are. And I love hearing this, because I think you're right. I don't think many companies actually do this that well. And I think it's kind of ironic when you think about how much effort and scrutiny goes into the contract part, yet that's only a safety net. Really, it comes down to the relationship, like you've talked about in your past lives all the way through now, and how you serve those clients.
Yeah.
So David, I have to ask a question then.
Okay.
you've been through so many different experiences now. I'm just curious, what has been the biggest change that you've gone through? How has your customers winning changed you, or even how you serve those customers?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my initial response then actually goes back really far in time, right? And I think part of this has been sort of this search for balance between what clients want and your obligation to serve them, right? And so, in my experience, a client focused business can become consumed by client feedback. And I'm not suggesting you shouldn't listen to client feedback, but I think there's a responsibility of the business to think about the things that the clients aren't focused on today, right? And so the this is years and years and years ago at First Global. I can say the biggest professional accomplishment. I'm sorry, the biggest professional compliment I've ever received was a client saying to me, "Thank you for not giving me what I wanted, but for giving me what I needed."
Hmm,
And so
powerful.
I think there's a balance that exists here in being incredibly focused on client feedback, but also having the courage to take some of your resources and some of your time and some of your energy to look out over the horizon and try to anticipate the things that they have not yet asked for, but you know they're going to need. And so I just to me, I think in trying to find ways to serve, um, I think I've just become a lot more. I think I've become more attuned over time to really seeking this appropriate balance between delivering what people are asking for, but realizing it's your responsibility to lead as well and try to think about what's coming next for what it's worth.
No, that's great. And speaking of what's coming next, one of the hot topics in the industry and has been on my mind for 6 months is artificial intelligence. And look, I know we could go all day on that topic alone, but I want to just understand from your perspective as a leader, how do you see artificial intelligence changing or impacting customer experience? And that could be at any level that is interesting to you.
Yeah, I mean, so first, I guess I'd say I'm not entirely sure artificial intelligence actually exists yet, right? We're probably still in the robotic process automation and machine learning days. I'm not saying it's not coming. I don't disbelieve in it, but we're probably not. It's probably not yet. It's probably not yet intelligent. Uh, again, listen, I think I've got Open GPT sitting on my desktop right now. But again, beside the point. A- And so I think particularly in the area we're focused on, I mean, one of the things that this topic area really motivates us is trying to think about how do you streamline, how do you use machine learning or robotic process automation to continue to streamline work. And so, we haven't gotten to some of the things I'm describing, but they are things we think about, right? So, for example, how do you use more natural language processing to make it easier for users of your system to get farther down the path rather than require them to navigate, right? Should the system be smart enough to interpret either verbal or text-based inputs, right? Not quite AI, but falls in the ML RPA realm, or to the extent that we're running workflow systems, should our systems be smart enough to be learning and self-healing, right? And so do I need expert humans to optimize workflows, or can I rely on a system that can learn and heal over time to think about workflow optimization? I mean, obviously we can, right? And so there are places, or one of the projects we actually worked on, we're just looking for a pilot client for it. We did this in partnership with Babu Sivadas Jiffy AI. Like, how do you turn a analog process into a digital one using ML and RPA, right? I should be able to scan a handwritten form into a system. The system should be able to know that that's an American Funds IRA app. It should be able to OCR the data off of it. It should be able to create a client folder. It should be able to initiate the workflow. It should be able to present it, in a ready form for a processor to just review complete. I mean, I wish OCR was 100%. It isn't today, but review, complete, and process. And so, if you think about or AI, right, or machine learning or RPA being an opportunity for scale, I think that's great. I also do think in cases like I just described, there's an opportunity to think about it in terms of client service, right? And so take the analog experience I just described. The industry says to its financial advisors, you have to conform to our ways of doing business, and our ways are digital.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes tries to use a combination of reward and punishment to get people to adopt digital practices, digital methodologies. But at the end of the day, maybe that client and that financial advisor are better served by having an analog relationship. Maybe it's just easier for the financial advisor to meet with a client and use a analog device like a pencil or like a pen to handwrite a form. And maybe that's just the way that they do business. Maybe we should try to do what we can to meet them where they are, as opposed to asking them to come to where we are. And so I think there are opportunities embedded in AI to meet clients where clients are, rather than change their behavior. And so we'll see. I mean, that's in front of us, not behind us. But that technology I just described exists. We could do that if we wanted to. And if you want to be a pilot client of that with Docupace, then raise your hand, because we're looking for one.
Yeah, I hear you. I think sometimes our industry, our leaders, we get too forward focused and not current focused. And we forget that there's still a whole bunch of people out there who are doing it the old way, and that's a viable way to do it. In our charge for making it better, we can't leave everybody behind.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen,
So
there'll be more digitization that comes, right? But
yeah,
I'm always curious about, whether or not the approach should purely be do it my way.
yeah,
Maybe part of our approach should be, I can help you get better at doing it yours.
yeah.
I mean, listen,
I think that's
you and I
great.
are both in the digitization business, man. Like, I think people should use, I think digital processing is going to get easier, faster, better, right? More convenient all the time, right? At some point, analog probably does go away. I'm not suggesting that analog is a long-standing model, but I'm only suggesting if we really are focused on client experience, a principle of ours should not merely to be change behavior, or their behavior, but change ours as well.
Well, I also think underlying all that, you're speaking to something else that we're very interested in, is user adoption. We know our systems are wasted on people who don't use it. And why pay for something you're not using?
Right.
So I think what we're fundamentally talking about is, how do we create the best user adoption of the systems that our customers want to implement? And sometimes it's a multi-pronged approach of where the data is coming from, where the user is entering the systems.
Yeah.
You've shared so much today, and I don't even think I should ask for one more nugget, but I'm going to do it anyway.
You
What
can.
is one
Absolutely.
secret or a key lesson you've learned that you think other leaders who are trying to win more customers or help their customers win, what do you think they could do better?
Um, One of the things if I go back to my first global days, one of the things that Tony Batman, our founder of that firm, one of the things that he had, what a somewhat familiar refrain from him, which I really internalized when it came to, really, really having I think the right kind of relationship with clients, was sort of this perpetual reminder to us that we were in the truth business, not the convincing business. And so that's always stuck with me as the type of relationship I want to have with the clients that I work with. And I think that, putting myself in the client seat, the kind of relationship that clients want to have with their business partners. And so as a client, my goal was always to be the best client of my business partners, because I couldn't be the biggest in every case, but I could be the best, right? And part of that was just like caring about each other enough to tell each other the truth in the relationship, right? Not with judgment, not with blame, particularly as you're trying to help someone adopt a new perspective. Because we can disagree without being disagreeable. We can try to find ways to bring objectivity to the decisions we make. And so this this idea that the responsible way to work with clients and prospects and to grow business was to think about your responsibility to tell the truth. And that if you've crossed the line into convincing that you're no longer really doing a service to somebody, if they are not ready to hear, then perhaps it's not your time to tell. And so I think if you can establish that kind of relationship, it is ultimately one that leads to long-term mutual success, the kind of relationships that are enriching and energizing and help mutual growth and things like that, which should be part of our collective relationship.
Mm-hmm. I love that. David, as we wrap this up, I do have another question, but before I go there, I want to help people connect with you. What is your website or the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, so you can find Docupace at www.docupace.com. You can find me at David_Knoch, Knoch, at Docupace.com. So if you want to reach out to me directly, go there. If you want to find out more about Docupace, come to me or come to our website, find out more.
Awesome. Okay, here's my last question. Who is a leader that you're following or being inspired by today?
So there's some recency to this. And so in the last quarter of 2022, we were really honored to bring Lori Hardwick onto our board as our board chair. And so Lori's somebody that I've known for a long time. I've really admired her perspective on the industry. I've known her forever. She's an incredible networker, very thoughtful, very, very challenging in a sort of loving and caring way, which I appreciate. And so, I think bringing her into the organization has been, for me, selfishly, very good for sort of opening my perspective, challenging my way of thinking. And that's been, again, there's lots of industry leaders I love. There's lots of leaders outside of that I love, but Lori's on my mind a lot these days. And so anyway, that's the one that comes to mind when you ask the question.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you. Hey, I want to thank David Knoch, the CEO of Docupace, for being on this episode of The Customer Wins. Go check out David's website at docupace.com. And don't forget to check out Quick at quickforms.com, where we take the work out of paperwork. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion like I have, and we'll click the like button, share this with someone, and even subscribe to our channels for future episodes of The Customer Wins. David, thank you so much for being with me today.
Rich, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Wins podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.